Okay, we are live. Hello, everybody. We are here. I'm going to give it a few seconds. Wait until we catch up on YouTube, as always. It's going to be an interesting conversation.
For sure.
Yeah. Oh, here we are. Okay, we're up. We are live. Okay, hello. So this is the second to last month of Indigenous Romance Readalong, which is wild. So tonight we're talking about Her Land, Her Love by Evangeline Parsons Yazzie. I did not expect this to be as rough to read as it was.
I was struggling.
Yeah. I guess I maybe should have known, because I knew it dealt with the long walk, but I did not expect.
I didn't either. I did not. I was like, maybe it'll just lightly touch on it.
Oh, no.
No.
No. It did not flinch away. It was rough. But then it was like broken up by these just beautiful moments. I mean, that's the thing, is I love, like, the main characters had this beautiful relationship. But geez, like, the thing everyone went through, it was a lot.
It was super sad and super flinching. So like, definitely trigger warnings if you're gonna read it for
sexual assaults,
all of it,
abuse,
violence.
Like bad conditions. Yeah, it was intense. I didn't know much about that part of history, though, so I do feel like I mean, it's horrifying. It's one of those things where I'm like, I don't really want to be reading this, but I also feel like it's probably good to be aware of what did happen.
Yeah, I felt the same way. Like, I got into it and I was like, okay. And then it started more into that direction. I was like, okay. Oh, no.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of thoughts on this. I guess I want to hear, like, what you.
I started on the 12th, and then I just threw in the towel today. I was just like, I can't. Like, I read it multiple days, like, trying to get through it, and I'm like, I cannot. I just can't.
Yeah. I mean, which I think is understandable. Like, the content is rough. Like, I was not expecting it to be so much. I mean, because there's pretty graphic descriptions of stuff that happens, like stuff that happens to the characters, stuff that happened more generally to people around them. I mean, and it's, I wouldn't say it's not I mean, like, it's not a bad book to read if you're
in no way is it a bad
ready for
book.
it.
It just catches you unexpectedly.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely got me a little emotional, but then it was like, the two of them, because the way this is, for anybody who didn't, maybe, I don't know if everybody was able to read this one, but the main character, we kind of follow her from when she's a baby, growing up in this, like, idyllic Navajo community, getting married, falling in love with her husband, having babies, starting to raise her children, and then her daughters are kidnapped and things just, like, go downhill from there. And it's this, like, saga with them and their children and eventually grandchildren. And their relationship is so beautiful.
Yes.
Like they're amazing together, and he's so gentle with her, and, like, they support I mean, like, that part of it is beautiful, but then it's like that, and then, like, the horror of what they're experiencing.
Yeah, like, I feel the representation for Indigenous men, it was great. It was spot on, because, like, a lot of the time you either get, like, romance's perception of Indigenous men is either like the brusque, muscular savage, or you have like the deadbeat, you know, like the stereotypical stuff where it's like deadbeat dad.
Yeah.
But Hashka was amazing.
Yeah. He was like, I don't know. I feel like he was like a very soft alpha, you know?
Yeah.
Like where he was like strong when he needed to be, but with his wife, he was like very soft and very sweet, and with his family. And like wasn't afraid to show his emotion. I love that the men in this book, like they would let themselves cry. And I was like, this is so great. Yeah. I don't know. It was.
Yeah. I wrote down I have just one page of notes because I'm like, I need to come up with something because I stopped at 35%. I did read the last chapter, so I'm like, I at least want to know if it like ended well, which I mean it did, but it didn't at the same time because like they have to go through so much. And it's
well, it's the first book in a series, so
I can't do it.
No, I know, I don't.
I cannot. Not after everything that happened this summer with the discovery of all of these bodies from the residential schools, and then having to read about more trauma. I was just like, I cannot.
Yeah, that's fair. It was a lot.
I would say for me it's like a 2.5, but I rounded it up to like a 3 because I'm like, this is not. It's not the I wouldn't necessarily say it's the content's fault. It's just, I think that it's really dense.
Yeah, it is.
When it counted, like when you had the good romance scene, the not necessarily like romance or like steam or anything, it's more of like tender intimacy.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I gave it 3.5 and rounded it up because I did read on, and even though it was hard, like I had a response to it, you know? And I don't know. Yeah, it was difficult. I do think the writing style is interesting, although I think eventually I appreciated the choice to write it the way she did because it ended up dealing with so many difficult topics. At the beginning, for like a romance, I was like, this is kind of odd because it feels very distant because it's in third person. It's almost as if, and you always are aware of her telling you the story. It's almost like she's telling the story is how it feels, the way it's narrated. And so that's odd for there to be that distance in a romance, but then with the horror and tragedy of the things that she talks about and all of the trauma, like then having some kind of distance is like,
yeah, it was a lot of
helpful.
Telling and not showing.
Yes. Yeah. Well, okay, this is something I was curious to get your take on because I do know there's a lot of people who have more oral storytelling traditions, and to me this read like that's what this was supposed to be. You know what I mean?
See, that's what I thought too, because I was trying to get through it and I was trying to be like, what can I possibly, I actually was like, what can I possibly associate with the voice? And when you read it, you're reading, you have a voice in your head. And I was like, what can I associate with this book to make me go further? And for me, it was I imagined myself when I was sitting with it, I imagined myself sitting with my grandmother while she's drinking tea and we're eating fried bread together and she's telling me this story. So I was trying to associate something positive because of all of the negative that I was feeling. Yeah. So I definitely get that vibe that is someone is telling it rather than, the flower rewriting or anything other than that. Which is probably why it felt dense.
Yeah, I think that's why it takes a while to get into what she's doing. Yeah. I had other things that if you have something you want to say, I'm just trying to remember what it was. I had something I wanted to say.
I did really like the way that the children approached their Hogan, their
Mm-hmm.
house
Mm-hmm.
as children, and like knocking on doors, and like how polite that they are, because like
Hmm.
I feel like that's kind of really prevalent with like even native kids now. Is just like you have to knock before you go in, or you knock on your grandma or whoever's door before you go in their house or before you go in their room or anything like that. So like that, I definitely was like, oh, I connect to that.
Yeah, that's cool. I think it's interesting that there was so much of like Navajo tradition and belief and practice woven into the story. Um, and I wasn't surprised because I saw at the end she said that like this was written for Navajo youth. And I'm like, yeah, I see that, because it does feel like she'll sometimes have these like sidebars where I'm like, where she's like, and now you're going to get some teaching from like what you should be learning at like, and so it was just interesting. Like I was like, okay, I can see that that's the audience that she was writing for.
Yeah. And also like, because you learn about like marriage customs and like
Mm-hmm.
process of marriage and
Yeah.
like the familial relationships and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, like I
Yeah.
get that, but mostly felt a lot of impending doom, because I was like,
Yes.
because as things start to go south, I'm like, oh no, this is where things start to shift, and
Yeah.
you feel more of that tense intensity.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was kind of interesting because throughout the book, you would get things of like, you know, their mythology or practices surrounding like cleansing rituals before husband and wives could like have physical contact if they'd been away from each other with enemies or whatever. And like, there's just like a lot of interesting, like things around that and teachings. I don't know. It was kind of cool. And the language, yeah, like the language thing was cool. That it is like, I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like that before, where you'll have sometimes blocks of text written in the Navajo language and then directly after the English translation, which is
Oh yeah, like Dine language is so just, and I was like, I patted myself on the shoulder whenever I recognized a word, which is mostly like hello, and I'm like, I got that one. I understood that. Yay me.
yeah. I didn't look at all of it because it got to be like a lot, and so sometimes I just like skip to the English part. But when I did look at it, it was interesting. I don't know, it's interesting when you've studied like a few languages where you can see like, oh, some of those words are very similar to like there were not everything, but like there were some words I noticed that were like really similar to the Arabic words for them, which is interesting. So I don't know. Who
Oh
knows like
yeah,
how.
that's the way Lakota is. It's a lot of like brokety French.
Hmm,
Yeah.
that's interesting. Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool that she did it that way.
Yeah, like there were a lot of really beautiful quotes for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I highlighted a lot. Like what I wasn't when I wasn't like feeling impending doom, I was highlighting things. I'm trying to go in there. I'm like, what did I highlight?
Yeah. Yeah, it was like, I don't know, it was interesting too. I remember there was like a whole section before they go kind of like leave their where they live, um where there's like, I don't know, they're talking about capturing women from the enemies who'd been capturing their women and children and stuff, and like her husband gives this whole thing of like, okay, but like if you bring other women into your household, make sure that your first priority is your Navajo wife and children, because like they deserve your first attention and they're the most important. And like, you know, it's interesting.
Yeah, there were also like parts that I highlighted about like plants and life
Hmm.
and stuff like that, and like
Yeah.
a lot of especially like a lot of like matriarchal expectations of like women and things.
Hmm. Yeah, well, and like the houses belong to the women, which is interesting. Like, so even though some of it has these like segregated gender roles, it's also like women also have like a position of ownership of houses, of like important roles in the community. I don't know, it's interesting.
Yeah, I like that too.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to look at my highlighted areas. I was like, yeah. And like expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Also like the brown skin praise, because there's a line that says they were big and brown. They looked like hardworking hands. And I was like, yes, I love brown skin praise in Indigenous books because
Mm-hmm.
it's so few and far between that you see that. Like when I was
Yeah.
younger, I did not see any brown skin praise at all
Mm-hmm.
in books. The first time I'd ever seen that was Apple in the Middle by John Quigley.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just like validation.
Yeah.
So now when I see it, I just, and I also really love the names too. Lots of
Yeah.
virtual hugs.
Yeah. Yeah, the names were cool and like meaningful, and it was cool because you kind of got two generations of romance. Like you had your primary characters, but then like they, you know, save some children who had been orphaned by an attack and bring them into their home, and then their son ends up falling in love with one of the girls, and they get married and they have their own like life together. And
yeah, I like that perspective.
mm-hmm. It was cool. There's a lot of like value of different generations. Okay, one thing that I really loved is because they're, you know, by the end of the book, the couple, they're grandparents,
Mm-hmm.
and there's still scenes of them coming together and like making love and enjoying each other. And it's not like super graphic, but I was like, I love that so much. I love that of seeing like older couples who still like care about each other and are tender with each other and have like a, you know, this like
It's
physical
a
element
very
to their
beautiful
relationship.
intimacy.
It's really beautiful. Yeah. And you don't see that a lot, you know, like you don't always see, I don't know. I thought that was cool.
I definitely don't see that either, because like a lot of the matriarchs in my family, the men have passed away, and like when I was growing up, when I lived with my grandparents, I call them mom and pops, but like I'm pretty sure that they were just like, from them talking to me and from them saying things, like I am 1000 like fairly sure that they were like an asexual couple, but they were like, the way that
Hmm.
they were like aromantic because of the way that they would like talk to each other there, and like they held hands, and the just like all throughout my years, all throughout my
Mm-hmm.
youth, and like as an adult, and then seeing how much they loved each other and cared about each other, it was so refreshing to see that too in this, that
Yeah.
they still love each other and care about each other, and like you don't see like that tension that you see in
Yeah.
other couples.
Yeah. Well, and I think just like them still, I don't know. I think there's something too to be said for like people who've been married for a long time, seeing it depicted where they're still also like noticing each other and enjoying, like, you know, like I don't know. I just, it was, that was, I thought that was really sweet.
Oh yeah, because Hesh was
It
like
is.
looking, like he was looking at her, and he was like recognizing her beauty, like
Mm-hmm.
even as a grandparent.
Yeah.
It
It
was
was so
adorable.
sweet. Like their relationship was like, and it kind that I think kind of kept me going, because it would be like you get this like horrific chapter of like the living conditions and the soldiers who were like assaulting people and like all of this awful stuff, and then you'd have a chapter that was like the relationship between the two of them that was just like beautiful, and I don't know.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then like the son and his wife, and just,
Mm-hmm.
it was adorable, and like
I know, when they finally have like a reunion after they've been apart for so long, this happened. Like, I was like, so this is why I ended up giving it 3.5 stars and rounding up, because I was like, okay, if I'm getting this emotional about the characters, by the end of the book, then like it's doing something, it's doing something right.
Well, and it's also like an exploration of how much can be said for couples who experience so much trauma and like how that come together. Like, even now, like me and Calvin have been through so much, but we still like notice each other and like talk to each other, and so that there's like that, and then you have something as huge as major separation and soldiers and all of this horrible, awful, terrible trauma, and yet there's still like this little tender ball of hope and love, and it's just like
oh my gosh. Well, there's a part, because I know you kind of skipped over some of it, but there's a part, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get like emotional. But there's a part where they're like on this long walk, and his wife gets really kind of like, I think she gets injured and ill and is like can't walk herself, and so they make a sling and he carries her on his back. Like, I just I don't know, like that kind of thing. And I think, metaphorically too, this thing of having a relationship where you're carrying each other even when things are difficult, and like you're providing whatever strength the other person needs when you have those kinds of moments in life. And I think that's very real, even though it's not usually as extreme as what they went through. But
and you're not giving up either. Yeah. That yeah. And he like not just Hashka himself like implementing that, but also to his son, and his son to on, and like how he treated his wife, and what he just wanted the best for her. And that's just tender, like between father and a son, and for him to pass on those values is so valuable.
Well, and then too at the end, like I just because, okay, I mean, I guess this is like kind of a lot of this is spoilers for what happens. So, because there are two daughters who had been kidnapped, they end up having a reunion at the end of the book, but one of the daughters had been like married to a white soldier who eventually abandoned her and had a baby with him. And then another girl, the other daughter, had married a man from their like one of the enemy tribes. Like I don't remember exactly what. But what was so beautiful is they like did a whole ceremony where they brought the babies into their family and said like, we recognize you as part of our people and as our grandchildren. And I think it was especially just really sweet too, because you saw examples of other people around them who were like, we want nothing to do with the women and their children who are like involved with these white soldiers. Anyway.
Yeah, I highlighted a lot.
It's like it's a rough history. This I don't know if I could deal with reading another book in the series, but I do kind of want to find something that's a little more like brief nonfiction about some of this and like what happened after this point. That is something I would be interested in, because it's not a time I know much about.
Yeah, I didn't know much about it either. The last thing I highlighted was probably somewhere around that 30% mark, where I think this is him talking to his son. When you find young women and bring them home, do not forget or leave your wife behind. She is the one who is the mother of your, can't pronounce that, children. Your wife is the one who took you in, fed you, wove day and night to clothe you, kept you warm on cold nights. She is the one who made you strong in your heart. Your wife has endured many hardships because of you. She bore your children in silence. It is because of your wife that your children have their 4 clans. It is because of your wife that your children are. Provide for your wife first before you begin to make provisions for your young woman captives. Your children are the ones who are closer to your hearts, not some woman's children without their 4 clans. Our children are the reason we gathered here now. Our children make us strong. Our children make us warriors without fear. Our children make us brave, so we may return to them, knowing we did all we could to protect them and their future. And I was like, that is so beautiful.
It is beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. It is.
And it was like, it's so true, because like, you know, regardless of tribe, there is a lot of like societal expectations for both like men and women in Indigenous communities that I'm just like, that is so true. Like 1000%, like this is something that I could hear like my uncle saying to his kids.
That's cool. Yeah. Well, and you know, she says like on the back of the book, she says, I wrote this novel for several reasons. First, it was to share with Navajo youth the truth about their history as told by their Navajo elders. Second, it was to inform Navajo youth about the strength of their ancestors and their Navajo people. Third, it was to present the painful history of the Navajo people from an unusual viewpoint, that of a love story. Fourth, it was to inform Navajo youth about the strength of love in terms of survival of an individual, a family, and of a people. And finally, it was to instill within Navajo youth and Navajos of all ages pride for their people, knowing they come from strong stock. Just like, it's like she's very clear on who she's writing this for, you know?
Oh, yeah. I would have really loved it, like a trigger warning, though, not gonna lie. Just...
Yeah, I agree. It was a lot. Like the first time there was an attempted sexual assault, I was like, oh, this is where we're going. Okay.
Right in there. Yeah.
Wow, it's a lot. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. One thing that I thought was interesting, and I mean, I think a lot of this is just how little I know and how little, I don't know. This is the thing, is like, I think I was taught in school in very broad strokes, non-specifically about the mistreatment of Indigenous people, but like not a lot of specifics, you know. So there's a lot that I feel like I just don't know. And one thing that I thought was interesting that they talked about in here is that I think this all must have happened not long before the California gold rush, because these people were in the hills around San Francisco area.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that they came up with a way to like move them elsewhere, when they're even against like violating a treaty and stuff, is because they had figured out that there was probably like gold and stuff in the hills around where they lived, and they wanted to be able to mine it. And so it's just like having that context, because like I have learned about like the gold rush and like all of that, but like this is context that was not covered.
That was politely just like swept under the rug.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny, like in college, I even took a class on California history, and like this specifically was not talked about. Like, I think what they did talk about was some of the Indigenous people in Southern California who, you know, ended up working with some of the like Catholic people, and, you know, they kind of portrayed it as like, well, like some bad stuff happened, but also some good stuff happened. Like, and that was
like a majority, you know, of what I learned about in school was like, my teacher did not expand anywhere past like the Civil War. So a lot of it was like, this is the natives' participation in the Trail of Tears. This is what happened to the natives during this war. This is what happened during the Civil War. And now you're in a different grade. We're going to talk about the Revolutionary War now and what happened to natives there. And so like, I did not get a lot of like expanding on any kind of native subject until I like got into college. But even then it was like, we're going to talk about ancient Mesopotamia. Okay.
Yeah. It's true. Like, it's kind of just like, we're just going to kind of gloss over, like, yeah, we know some bad stuff happened. it shouldn't have, and now we're going to move on to something else. Like, I mean, that's kind of, I think, how it's been treated, which is unfortunate. I mean, even, and I think that's the thing too, is like, even some of the stuff that's come out recently about these residential schools and stuff, like, I did not know those existed until, I think the first time I knew anything about it is when I read Dread Nation by Justina Ireland a couple of years ago. That was the first time I had ever heard that they even existed.
Yeah, and then even that has like some.
It has some, yeah. I mean, it's not
stuff like that.
Yeah,
because I remember Bear and Weezy talking about it, and and it's just like so little, and then you had what happened a couple months ago with like TJ Klune and the 60 scoop, and like now all of this history is coming out and people are like, no, that didn't happen. And it's like, yeah, it did. You're just you're politely trying to sweep it under, but it's like you have to know about these things. Like a lot of the times when I see teachers that are like, what can we possibly talk about, what can we possibly expand on, like especially when it comes to like, if you're going to talk about the wars so much, why don't you talk about like BIPOC inclusion of what they did during the wars instead of like what we have been regurgitating for years and years on end. Like we already know about all that, but we want to know about all of this stuff.
Yeah. No, I wish I had learned more, because I think a lot of stuff just doesn't get talked about. I do think it's interesting in the last year. I feel like more people are aware of more things like Juneteenth, like the residential schools, like their existence has been like become part of national conversation. And, I don't know. I mean, I hope that some of that is reflected in school curriculums and stuff moving forward, but I don't know.
Yeah, because I didn't know anything about this in my high school history class. I would have been like, wait, whoa, like back up. We need to talk about this. Versus, like, oh yeah, there was a gold rush and everybody was going out to California because they thought it was super fun. And then like your English teacher being like, hey, here's the Grapes of Wrath, read it. What about all this other stuff?
Right. Well, and the fact that like I knew more about the mistreatment of Chinese people during Gold Rush here in California, but not Indigenous people. And
it's just like, what?
Mm-hmm.
But all in all, it was not a bad book. It was just very emotionally.
Yes.
It was emotionally, not necessarily like draining, but like, it
was a lot. It was hard. Yeah. Like I had moments where I was like, I don't want to keep reading this right now, but I'm going to anyway. Not because it's bad, but just because it's like, it's hard to read some of it.
And it's a lot of hardship.
Yeah.
Because I started on the 12th and I like read multiple days and I was still just like, it's not going to happen. It's not going to get finished. I mean, granted I did skim through it and like, I consider that it's finished. I'm going to count it finished. I'm still going to give it like a fair rating, but like, oofta.
No, I was definitely pushing myself to read it for some parts of it, because it was oh man. Like, I don't want to like say some of the specific things on here, but like there were some things that got mentioned that I just was like, oh my God, what? Like they did what?
It was a lot of the essay and a lot of the R scenes that happened that I'm like, no, this is like 17 episodes of Law and Order SVU stuffed into one chapter that I just cannot.
Well, and then I think the horror of like combining that with like other forms of violence, like it was there were just some really
what they did to little kids and like the AB stuff, and I'm like,
oh my God. It was yeah. Well, and you know what I will say while reading this, it just like rekindled my anger at one of the books that made it to the final rounds of the Vivians. Did you hear about this?
No.
So the Vivian is like a new romance award, and I was a judge for it, not for this category. So I didn't have to read this book, but one of the finalists for like inspirational romance was a historical, and the hero had been involved in genocide of Indigenous people. And I'm like, what?
Dances
like,
with Wolves, what?
Yeah, I'm like, how exactly did this make the, after all the talk of trying to like change the award to make it better and more inclusive and diverse and aware, and like this is one of the books that makes it to your final round for that. I'm like,
a colonizer love interest? No.
Who had been in the military, like he was a former soldier. Yeah, anyway. So like I was upset about it when I first heard about it, and then reading this book, just like, and reading about the stuff the soldiers were doing in this book, just like rekindled.
Like, granted, I'm all for a soldier getting redemption in a romance, but like if he's a colonizer that did bad things to innocent people, I'm like, no.
Well, and I think it's just glossed over too. Like I don't think that it's not like really dealt with. It's like romanticized, and that's not. Yeah. No.
No. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
I could not. I would be like, no, thank you. Just.
No. So it's going to be interesting. They're doing the awards ceremony Saturday night, so I'm going to be on a live over on Isabel's channel, Happy for Now. Me and her and Mara are going to be doing a live reaction to the awards.
It's going to be a lot of why.
It's going to be interesting. And then, so because I can't talk about any of it until they announce the winner, but I did like a 6-month long vlog of being a judge for it. So I'll be releasing that like Sunday or Monday.
I'm very interested to watch it. For sure.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm kind of like, there were some good books, but there are some rants in there too. It's like an hour and a half long. It's a long video. Yeah, but it was 6 months. I read 20 books. So
that's not bad for you for 6 months.
Well, I read more than that, but it was like the vlog is covering the 20 books I read over 6 months just for that award that I haven't reviewed or talked about publicly, like, because you can't talk about the books that you're reading if you're a judge until they announce the winner. So, like, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And you're assigned
regardless
stuff.
of what happens, I am hyped to see that vlog.
It's gonna be interesting. I'm like, man, I hope some of these indie authors don't come for me. But I mean, there are some great indie authors. Wonderful. I love to promote good indie authors, but there are also some.
Like, you should have just stuck to Wattpad, buddy.
Oh my gosh.
I feel that. There are times where I have written books by indie authors, and I'm like, you should have just kept this on your blog, because why?
Yeah.
Somebody's
well, it's funny because like my favorite book that I read that I loved in this process was an indie title. But also, not everything.
We've all read that one book where you're like, why? Are you okay? Do you need a checkup? Like, anything you need?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's gonna be exciting. So that is coming soon.
So what are we reading again next month?
Oh yes, next month should be much more fun.
Okay.
We are reading Abandon by Juanita Fazekas. She is from Australia.
It looks very steamy.
Yeah, it does. It's a shifter a shifter paranormal romance. So that should be fun. This is what we're reading next month. We will talk about it the last Thursday of August, and that will wrap up
what we've been doing this whole
what
time.
we've been doing this whole time.
That's like the 26th. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, boy.
Can you believe it? It's like we've made it through. We've done 6 months of this almost. Yep.
Right here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's it. I'm excited. I think this will be fun. It's also not very long. It's like 300 pages. So.
Yeah, because I'm looking on here right now to see like, oh, what, how much is it? But it doesn't tell you in the app. It tells you like.
Oh yeah. This one and this one's this one came out in 2016.
As
yeah.
werewolves, I'm okay.
Well, I think yes, werewolves.
I'm gonna see how much it is on Amazon.
Okay. I'm excited about it. I think it'll be fun. I'll read the back for anyone who's interested.
Ooh.
Ava's life isn't easy. Her dad is long gone and her mom is an alcoholic. Mom, see, she's Australian. I love it. It's like Australian. Okay. Her mom is an alcoholic who lives in the next town over. She lives with her volatile, drug-addicted cousin Sam and cares for her baby sister Emerson, all while still going to school. The only affection she receives is from the neighbor across the road. That is, until Dakota, with his intense green eyes and dangerous aura, enters her life and mesmerizes her from the very first moment. Ava is hooked, and Dakota won't leave her alone. But Dakota has a secret. He is a werewolf.
Dun, dun, dun.
There it is. I think it's going to be fun. I'm excited about it.
Oh, it's $2.99 on Kindle because I just bought it. I was like,
nice.
And I was like, oh, I clicked it. And good.
Perfect.
I wanted it anyway.
Perfect. And while we're on here, I wanted to, let me find it, let everybody know. So I was telling Michelle, a cool thing that happened through this process is because I also took the books from this and other ones by these authors that I found and made a list on Goodreads, because on Goodreads you can create lists. And I made one for Indigenous romance by Indigenous authors. Well, an author found the list and reached out to me and was like, hey, could you add my book to the list? This is so cool. I love what you're doing. And is now reading the books on the list because she was like, I can never find anything, and was really excited. So if any of you guys are interested, she has a book coming out August 5th. She is Cherokee, and her book is The Road Home by Christina Berry, like the berry you eat. And it sounds like fun. I'm going to read this too in case anybody is interested, because we're not reading it for this, but maybe some of you guys could go check it out.
And it comes in handy because I can't say anything yet because we haven't like released our announcement videos or anything, but there are a couple prompts from Indigathon that these books will, that they coincide with. So
there you go. So keep your ear out. Okay, so this is, you know what I'm going to do? I am actually going to share my screen so you guys can see what it looks like. Let's do this. Okay, here we go. Nice. All right, so this is the book, The Road Home. Sex and rock and roll are Jake Sixkiller's top priorities. As frontman of one of Austin's most popular bands and with a long line of lovers knocking on his bedroom door, he has it all. Until a car accident shakes his world to its core. With his best friend in the hospital fighting for her life, he's flooded with memories of the night he lost his entire family at the hands of a drunk driver. Amid the turmoil, he finds solace in the arms of a woman he should probably avoid. Nicole, aka Arson Nick, a roller derby dynamo.
Oh,
yeah,
roller derby.
I love it. Is a prickly spitfire who throws Jake into a tailspin. When he's offered a once-in-a-lifetime tour opportunity that brings him back to the Cherokee Reservation where he grew up, Jake must decide what matters most, a future still unwritten or a past he buried long ago. I mean, this sounds good, right?
Like, it sounds amazing.
Yeah, I think I need to pre-order myself a copy. So if y'all are looking for another author to add to your list, check out Christina Berry. Yeah, I just thought that was cool, so I wanted to share. She had reached out to me, and I was like, oh, awesome.
I'm gonna check that out for sure.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Anything else before? I know this was definitely the heaviest of the books we have read.
Definitely packs a punch, an emotional punch.
It does. Yes, it does sound amazing. I'm glad, yeah.
Because how often do you read about roller derby chicks?
I know, right? Like a Spitfire roller derby girl and a rock and roll Cherokee guy. I mean, that sounds fun. It sounds good.
It sounds really good, actually.
Yeah, it does. I'm gonna have to go pre-order a copy. So go check it out. I will. You know what I'll do after this? I'll leave a link in the video description for anybody who wants to find it. All right.
Sounds good to me.
Cool. Well, thanks everybody. Join us next month. We will be back here talking about Abandon the last Thursday of August, and we'll wrap this up. Thanks for doing this with me, Michelle. It's been great.
It's been great.
Yeah. All right. Have a good night, everybody. We'll see you later. Bye.